Hello! A lovely rep at Arrtx sent me this big box of acrylic paint markers to try out. There are 60 colours and they're brush tips. I've never tried brush tip acrylic paint markers. I'm really curious to see how they go. You may have seen a recent video I did trying out some paint markers from Kmart Australia. These are regular ones which you pump and they have a round nib. They were nice, but they dried out very quickly and I don't think they're going to last very long. So I'm really curious to see how the Arrtx ones are going to hold up by comparison. Let's get into it! So while I'm taking off the plastic, I'll just mention that this video is not sponsored by Arrtx. They have just sent me the products to try out and then all of the opinions are my own. They provide me a little information just as to where you can buy the products along with the product description. So I'll link these in the description below and you can check them out for yourself. This set is 60A, so I'm guessing there's a 60B out there too. They're artist grade, water-based and brush tipped. You can use them on different surfaces and they have high adhesion according to the description, meaning the paint will actually stick to things. Now I've got the lid off. On the back of the box are all of the colours with numbers. They do not have names, and that would be a nitpick for me. I do like it when art supplies have the colour names as well as numbers. There are also numbers on sticker sheets here, along with a business card with all of their socials. And when I was taking a closer inspection, these little stickers are meant to go on the pens themselves, so you've got to put them on. It's like a whole activity in itself. And here's what one of the pens looks like. It is definitely a brush, and what I like is the paint is already down. You don't actually pump these pens like you do with other markers. Look at that. And can I say how grateful I am to not have to shake and activate 60 pens? That would have taken forever. They're all ready to go and I love that about these. I'm also a huge fan of brush tips on any pen, so I'm very excited to try them out. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. I need to stick all of these stickers onto the pens. I've done that off camera because it took me a long time. I went by the order of the pens and I'm pretty sure it's right. The rest of the stickers I've actually stuck on a piece of paper and I'm going to swatch it so I can keep it in with the pen box here, rather than having to write all of the numbers down. I was too lazy for that today. So I've got a bit of marker paper here. I've drawn a black line for that white pen, and let's get swatching. Starting off with the white one, it's fairly opaque, although I noticed that it's not as opaque as the Kmart one, which is interesting. But otherwise, all of the pens in this set worked immediately. There were no issues with any dry ones. They're all quite juicy, and they seem to be pretty opaque overall. There are some incredibly pretty colours in here. I particularly love those pinks. And there's quite a range of pastel to bright colours, which is nice. I always like to have a variety of shades when it comes to paint markers. The brush nib itself ranges from 1mm to 6mm, so you could get quite a thin line or a fatter line depending on how much pressure you put on the pen. But do be careful, they are quite delicate, as I found out in my later projects, and they do require a little bit of care to not squish them too much. The paint, or ink, flowed smoothly from all of the nibs, and you could see how they're laying down on this quite shiny paper. I'm glad at least there are numbers to put on the ends of the pens, because it was easy enough to match up the pen with the swatch sheet that I have here. Let's just pray I don't lose that swatch sheet. I'd say the only thing that this set is really lacking are browns. There's one C53 there which I'd consider to be a brown, and then the other ones, which are 51 and 52, are maybe not quite as brown as I'd like. There are also quite a few metallics in the set, a gold and silver, but also these ones here, a green, red, blue, teal, and last up are some fluorescent colours too, which I think is quite nice. I always love neon colours, even if they're not light fast, they always look pretty. Oh, and here's the marker pad I was using by Jazz Art, which is an Australian company. It's got a raincoaty feel to it, but it's quite good for markers, especially for having a swatch sheet like this. I'm hoping it won't get tatty too quickly. I've got this folded into 3 sections. Look how shiny that gold is. It's absolutely beautiful. And the silver, it looks like shiny mercury. The other metallics are nice as well, and they have a pretty opaque coverage. I really like the black in the set, that is super dark. And overall, this 60 set has a lovely range of colours. It just needs a couple more browns, I think. So what am I going to do with the pens? Well, in my previous video, this is what I created, and I'll link it at the end of this one so you can check it out. I decorated this wooden phone holder from IKEA, and I also painted a little picture on these mini canvases. So I was thinking maybe I could do some similar things. I have another couple of phone holders here that are just waiting to be painted. This one has resin stuck all over it, and I really need to sand these back. So I'm definitely going to decorate at least one of these today. And I've got some other ideas too. I'll just move these ones out of the way because now we're moving on to new projects. I have this 3 Wise Kitties figurine that I bought at a garage sale for a whole $1 because I knew it would be perfect for painting on, and it was very good timing with these pens showing up. I actually did a drawing of 3 Wise Kitties last year, done in alcohol markers, and I thought this would be a great idea to use this for inspiration for the figurine. But first up, I need to gesso everything because all of these surfaces need prepping for pens, and I need to get rid of that mess. So I'll do that off camera and I'll come back in a moment. Here we go, magically all gessoed up. There are still a few marks on there, but whatever, it'll be fine once I draw over them. And I also painted the cats because I figured the plaster would be too porous, it really needed a better surface. Let's get arting. For my first project today, I'm going to decorate another phone holder, and I had it in my head that I wanted purple roses. So that's what I'm doing, a whole bunch of roses that ended up looking very cabbagey by the end of it. They're those little old-fashioned tea roses. But halfway through this I was going, why did I pick something so complicated? I was getting graphite everywhere, which is why you'll see me lifting it off with one of those kneaded erasers, because it was just smudging all over the place. These things are really awkward to draw on because it's not a very big surface, and they also have indentations where the phone sits, and those are just so super difficult. So they're a bit wobbly in places, but I think with so many of them it's very hard to see that. It's a very busy pattern that I ended up drawing, but it was quite fun to do, and I think it looks quite good just in pencil here, so I figured I'd just keep on going. One last graphite left here, and I'm ready to go on with the paints, or should I say paint pens. So I picked out a bunch of purple shades, and I'm starting off with the darkest purple and then just going around using different purples to decorate each rose. I'm not going into super shading detail here because this would have taken me years to do. So basically it's one colour per rose. You can see I'm leaving white gaps, and that's because I wanted to draw outlines around the petals, so I was leaving them there so I could see them later on. Otherwise it could have just been purple blobs and I could have just drawn the petals straight on over the top, but that would have been far too easy. Now I have to do it the long way. But I actually think it's turned out better because of that. The rose that looks pink on here is actually the fluorescent purple. It was a bit brighter than I anticipated, but I do like it. It kind of breaks up the darker purples around it. And I really love the dark purple as well. I think that also adds a variety to the other 2 or 3 purples, which are more mid-tone ones. It's quite nice just to pick one colour and do everything as a limited palette rather than worrying about multiple colours. I had considered doing rainbow roses, but I just thought it would get a bit too complicated. It's just easier to stick with one colour and use different shades of it on the same picture. I think it's actually looking really pretty. But oh my lord, decorating inside that groove is such a difficult part. But the good thing with these pens is they have that brush nib, which is a lot easier to get into smaller places, and the tapered nib means I could achieve finer detail from the pens in comparison to chunkier round nib paint pens. I mean, don't get me wrong, I like those too, but these brush nibs were a real pleasure to use, and you could see the paint is lovely and juicy coming out of them. I just had to remind myself not to push the end and pump them like I would a regular paint pen, because that would destroy the nibs and they would be unusable. So don't do that with these ones. Another thing I noticed is that these pens seem to be best when they're stored upright with the nibs facing down. That keeps all of the paint in the nibs, and when I had them lying flat on the desk for a while, they did start to kind of dry out a little bit. So that's just an observation I had from using these. Now I'm filling in all of the white gaps with the black pen, but I didn't want to outline all of the flowers with it, so I'm just covering those gaps just so that everything is covered and I don't have any white showing on the piece. But I just had to use that shiny gold metallic pen. How beautiful does it look under the light? And this worked so well for outlining all of the roses. I mean, it may be a little bit too dominant, but I just really like how the pattern turned out. I think the gold with the purple is really stunning. Although I did seriously consider using the silver to outline everything, it was a real toss-up, but my instinct told me that the gold would be the one I really wanted to use, and so I stuck with that. That's why everything's gold. But silver would have worked just as nicely, I think. This was so much fun to do, and my favourite part of the whole piece of art was all of the outlining and covering those last little white bits. Having sped this video up, it seems like it's effortless, but this genuinely took me quite a few hours to do, and it was very time consuming, although repetitive, so quite easy in the end. Even though it's a busy pattern, it's still quite a simple concept, but simple usually does work better, and repetitive patterns are always very effective on these sorts of things. I'm not too sure I should have added white highlights. Let me know in the comments if you think I've just ruined it here. I'm still on the fence about that. I just like adding white highlights to everything I do. But I think I got a bit carried away in this project. The last thing I did was add on some clear polyurethane, and here's the finished piece. I really love it. That gold is so shiny, and I am very happy with the outcome. Maybe not so much the white highlights, but I can live with that. It's not that big of a deal. The only issue I had is that the polyurethane actually lifted the neon purple quite a lot, because for some reason that one just took so much longer to dry. And I actually had to retouch it a few times, but I got it there in the end, and my phone sits perfectly in it. So another successful project there. I've got 2 of them now, and here's a third one. What am I going to do on this one? Well, you're going to have to wonder some more, because the next project I'm going to do are the cats. I've been dying to decorate these. As soon as I saw them, I knew I had to bring them home. I'd remembered the little drawing that I'd done last year, and their character names are Lemon, Magenta and Cyan, funnily enough. So I thought I'd carry that colour scheme over to these ones, but I noticed that 2 of them are in a different order, so I need to remember that, because I want to match the colour with the same cat. Now this is a large surface, and I didn't want to use up all of the paint pens on these, so I'm going to mix up some colours with regular paints. And I've got a couple of different yellows for the yellow because I just want it somewhere in between. This is just a motley collection of different paint brands that I have in my stash. I'm using white as a base for all of them because I want to have a pastel colour rather than anything too bright. I figured that starting off with a colourful base would make it easier to decorate over the top with the paint pens, and then I don't have to colour all of the cat with them. So you'll see what I'm going to do in a little while. I'll just finish mixing these up. I was trying to make them all about the same level of hue or tone, just so that one isn't brighter than the other. They ended up being a bit brighter than I expected because I always forget that acrylic paint tends to dry darker than what it looks like when it's wet, but I am overall happy with the 3 colours that I ended up mixing. So I have lemon on the left over here, and cyan and magenta are the opposite way around to what they were in the picture. If I thought the phone holder was hard to decorate on camera, the cats were so much more difficult. I eventually stood them up because it was wobbling a lot less. I'm just going to paint one side for demonstration purposes, and then the rest I did off camera. I really needed to let it dry a bit, and then I could hold it in my hand to paint the rest of it. I also did a couple of coats of this base layer because I wanted the paint to be really solid, and I'd started off by painting a harsh line between each cat, and I decided I didn't like that, so I did go for a gradient look in the end. I'll show that in a moment. I'll just finish off painting magenta here. She is pinker here than in the drawing, and that's because I was using a limited marker palette on that drawing, and the pinks were slightly to the peach side rather than magenta. If I can find it, I'll link that video as well at the end of this one. It'll be somewhere in my archives. So here's what they look like when the paint is dry, and you can see I do have a little bit of a gradient just fading from one colour to another. So there's a green and purple line. I should have done a second layer on the bottom. I might deal with that later. The visible part of the cats are looking quite good, although you can see there are a lot of flaws in the plaster because I was too lazy to sand it and just painted over everything. I'm just going to have to live with them. But now it's time to get the paint pens out, and I started off colouring in the eyes. I want green eyes for all 3 cats, and I've noticed I was having a bit of an issue where the paint pens started to pill up and dry out. Now, I actually thought it was this particular paint pen, but we'll see in a little while that it's probably actually the acrylic paints on the cats themselves causing this. I didn't think of that, did I? But I guess we can call this a learning experience, that these particular paint pens do not like going on the top of other acrylic paints. So I let the paint dry out fully on the eyes, and I decided to go over it again now that I have a better surface to work on. And I kept forgetting to move the cat, so half of what I'm doing is off camera. I do apologise for that. I thought a black outline would be too strong, so I'm using the 1 brown pen to go around the edges of the eyes. It's such a mess at the moment. I will fix it eventually. I'm using a darker green, and this went over the top of the other green much more easily. And then I decided to go over the brown with the gold, and I think this looks so much better. I was trying to make the eyes look fairly cute and not super creepy. It's always quite challenging to do that on figurines, but I think they turned out okay with a few little highlights. I started decorating with the paint pen, and this is where I had major issues, so I'm actually going to paint little patches on with the white gesso, because the paint pens will happily stick to that. They just weren't adhering to the paint that I'd put on top of the cats. I think it might have actually been the white paint that I'd mixed everything into. That's quite shiny, and for some reason it just does not like other things sticking on top of it. It's so annoying. But my idea for this came from the patchwork phone holder. I thought it would be really cute to draw little patches on the cats, and the colours would also be yellow, blue and pink, but I'd only put 2 colours on each cat. So the yellow cat will have blue and magenta, the blue one will have magenta and yellow, and the magenta one will have blue and yellow. Oh my gosh, I had to say that so many times before I got it right. Thankfully, the pens started working now I had that gesso layer, and I was able to complete the decoration of them. Because I do like the base colours of all 3 cats, I decided just to put a few patches on rather than covering them entirely in patches. And I was thinking to myself, is this even going to work out? Because it's not looking that great at the moment, but I did persevere with it, and I am happy with the final outcome. But of course I have to go through the process first, and my camera decided to go out of focus. 3D objects are so difficult to film. It's much easier decorating a flat surface like paper, but of course I have to do something difficult. But I think it was worth it in the end. Yay, we're back in focus, and I am using the black pen to outline everything. I made a quick decision at this point that the patches were too boring on their own, so I'm using darker colours to decorate each patch. Unfortunately, the yellow just does not show up, so I did end up using a yellow ochre, which is a bit brown for my liking, but at the moment you just couldn't see anything. I used the fluorescent pink over the top of the magenta, and I'm kind of regretting that because I had the same issue where the fluorescent colour did not dry. So when I put clear gloss over the top, it did smudge quite a lot, and I had to fix it up off camera, but we haven't got to that point yet. I'm now just adding on all of those little patches with the little stitch marks. This always turns out so cute, and I recommend trying out a patchwork quilt for yourself in an artwork. They're really fun to do, and they look very effective. I mean, I could have used silver, I guess, for the stitching and outlines, but I went for the black. I just wanted something that stood out and gave it a strong cartoonish look. I'm glad I only added a few patches. I think they stand out more than if I had too many on there. And I like that there's patches of each colour on the cats because I think it just ties all 3 of them together like they're a trio. And once again I've got to put highlights on the patches, but I did refrain from putting highlights anywhere else. And once I finished doing this, it was ready to paint with gloss. I needed to cover this because the paint was scuffing off really easily. Let me show you what it looks like once it's all finished. Here it is! I also coloured in their noses as well. But I am so happy with the colour scheme on this. I do have a few scuff marks where that pink came off when I added the gloss. Not much I can do about it. Aside from a few flaws, I think it looks really cute. I love the 3 colours together. You can't go wrong with primaries, really. And it's just really fun to bring some characters I drew to life as a figurine. I mean, some people would probably think this is really tacky, but I think it's cute. I know my original drawing didn't have the patches, but I felt like it needed those, and that's how I wanted to add the paint pens onto this. So you can use paint pens as an accent rather than the entire artwork. I totally forgot to cover the base. I'll do that later. My favourite is the pink eye patch on the left-hand one. So now I have this other phone holder that I have not painted, and honestly by this point I had just run out of ideas, so I'm going to leave it up to you. Let me know in the comments, what should I paint on this? I would love to hear your suggestions, and I thought this would be a fun way to interact with each other. I'll choose some from the comments and I'll put up a poll that everyone can vote on, so look out for that. I also have this hideous ornament that I found off the side of the road. I rescued it. I was going to decorate this today as well, but it's a total disaster. Oh my gosh, it's hideous. So I'm going to do this in a future video and fix it all up. I cannot let it stay like that. Oh my god. But let's go back to the successful ones. I'm really happy with what I created today. I've got some leftover paint there which I'll use in a future project. But for now I have these two finished pieces and I'm really happy with what I achieved today. I think they turned out nice. Let me know what you think. And a big thank you to Arrtx for sending me the markers to try out. I really like them. I love the box that they're in, but I would definitely keep these ones upright because it seems like the pens will last a lot longer that way. Please tell me if I'm wrong on that and I can lay them flat again. And thank you all for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it today. If you did, I'd really appreciate a thumbs up. It always helps the channel, and you might want to subscribe for more videos. Here's my previous video using the Kmart paint pens, and hopefully the kitty video there, if I can find it. Have a great day, and I'll see you all again in my next video. Swatch you later. Bye!